Hi everybody, it's Mary Satoli with the Follow Your Bliss Foundation. I want to wish everybody a happy holiday. I hope your Thanksgiving was good and that you have a great Christmas. I'm even wearing my red plaid for you tonight. A lot's been going on. This is an understatement. I have probably, as usual, a lot to talk about, but I want to start backtrack a little bit from my last video, which was about a month ago, I think, and talk about Stephanie's suicide. I know this is a really, really sensitive subject because I got some pretty blatant comments in my comment feed the last video, and I want to clarify something for those of you who are really upset about this, which I understand. When I said that I understood the story to be, that means that I heard from Dr. Armstrong that he did not get the prescription to Stephanie in time before she jumped off the bridge. Now, I want to also include in this statement that that was the way I understood it. Now, I don't want to spread false rumors, so I have talked to several other people who've given me further information about the situation, and I'm going to make a statement about this tonight, and then I'm going to leave it alone, mainly because I want to leave everything in the past, including all of this nightmare with this Benzo stuff. It's my understanding that Stephanie had been, and I'm not saying this is fact now, so please don't shoot me, I'm just the messenger. And this is where I guess I get upset, is because all the people who are trying to help, including myself, get crucified and they quit helping because everybody is so angry. And we need to step outside of that anger and put it aside and say, okay, you know what? We've all had involvement in this some way. We would have never needed these mental health drugs had we not been in the culture we're living in. We're all experiencing this on different levels right now, whether it's depression, anxiety, whatever it is that you're having thrown at you right now. So we need to kind of step out of that anger and say, how can we engage in this whole situation and make it better? Because it's about our future, and we're kind of at a point in time where we need to stay focused on solutions and not staying angry at the people that have done this to us. Because let me tell you what, from my perspective, they're doing this to us because we have allowed it. We wanted this quick fix, they're delivering. And that's basically what it boils down to. Yes, we were not well informed, and yes, would we have made different choices? I probably would have gotten off the drug sooner, but I don't know in my situation with my anxiety that I wouldn't have taken the drug initially. There needs to be accountability with everyone, with everything that's going on in this world, I think. And that's what's gotten us into the situation, is we're not being accountable on an individual basis. So we have people that step in, try to help, and they get crucified in the process of which, and that's where I'm upset, is because you cannot hold anyone accountable for somebody else's suicide. They made a choice to end their life, and yes, whether she was reinstated or not, it's a rough thing, because I went through reinstatement myself. I've had cross tolerance on 3 drugs. I'm by myself. I have no family. I've been on disability, which doesn't pay my bills. So you need to think about what the difference is between a person who has had the endurance to get through this withdrawal and the people who commit suicide, because there are plenty of others. And from my experience, I've also been in a detox center trying to come off these drugs. They try to take you off way too quickly. I don't know for sure, and I'm not going to spread rumors because I don't know for fact, but because I don't know what treatment center she was in. But I do know that it's very possible they could have taken her off the drug too quickly, which is why she needed to reinstate, or why she was having such a bad time and needed to go to Dr. Armstrong in the first place. So no more nasty messages to me, please. I understand everybody's upset. It's a very, very sensitive subject because there are so many suicides with this drug. But I think we need to embrace the whole situation and say, how do we move out of it? Okay, so I'm going to move on a little bit and try to break this down into sections tonight because there's a lot to cover. I want to back up to another part of my last video where I was talking about our history and what's gotten us here. It's my guess that, like anything else, that everything starts out with good intentions, including all this drug stuff, and I think that probably back during the years that they developed polio vaccines and antibiotics to save people's lives, they had also gone about creating some other drugs that weren't quite so helpful. And they're helpful, but it's just how we're using them and how long we're using them and how much we're using them. So it's got a lot of factors that go into it. But I think I spoke last time in my last video about the Nixon administration and how our managed care system was enacted in the 70s and how he had been involved in making marijuana such a bad drug. I think I mentioned that it was considered a class 1 narcotic and that benzos were a class 4, to give you an idea how marijuana was demonized in the 70s. So from here, fast forward to the Reagan administration, who was, from what I've read, highly paranoid of mental health patients. It's my understanding that the guy that attempted assassination on him was had some mental health issues, and rather than actually doing something to help these people, and I've seen this firsthand when I was in the homeless shelter out in California, is that these people have been yanked out of institutional situations. It started in California when Reagan was governor there, and they shut down all the mental health institutions, and our crime rate went up exponentially because they tried to put them in housing in a certain place and they couldn't manage on their own. And so now we've come up with all these labels that have depression, anxiety, ADHD, whatever you want to call it. We've all got some mental health problem because it's easy to fix with drugs. But what I want to accomplish is finding programs and enacting centers that can deal with the root cause of our problems, which is the lack of interconnectivity with each other, the every man for himself society that we've turned into, because this is what's creating a lot of our anxiousness and depression and lack of connection. And I know for myself, going through withdrawal, I am celebrating, yeehaw, my 2-year anniversary next month in January and my birthday in 10 days. And I'm going to tell you what I've done to sort of transform my life over the last month, going through this really bad, about 4-month wave now, which I think is finally coming to an end, yeehaw. And I think I'm going to be able to move into a whole better place with my life starting now until 2018. So I want to share all this with you because I'm hoping it'll help in some way. You have to excuse me. I have allergies. We have not had any rain in Arizona for like 4 months now, and the air is terrible. And I have chronic, I've tried everything from my nebulizer to whatever, so I'm really raspy and my voice sounds like a frog. So I want to finish this little section on the mental health system before I go into the dietary stuff. As many of you know, I was in a mental health shelter when I was really sick at the beginning of my journey around 2003 after my TBI, my skull fracture. And I ended up, because there were no shelters for single women, particularly with no children who were not drug addicts according to their standards. I mean, we're talking street drugs, not benzodiazepines. That's a legal drug. So it's okay to have a drug dependency as long as it's legal in this country. So there aren't any shelters, and I was severely sick. I was skin and bones. I was in pretty bad shape, and I had to get off the streets where I could have some place to eat healthy and take care of myself. So the only thing to do, because in California, which is where I was at, if you can prove that you're dangerous to yourself or other people, then they have to sort of like do something with you. And so they put me in a mental health shelter there. I threatened to throw myself into an oncoming bus because I was about desperate for help and I had nowhere to turn. So my experience there was pretty interesting in that I've talked about this in other videos, but I'm going to go into a little more because of what happened in the 80s and how all these people are basically being shuffled in and out of this system with virtually no support. And this shelter is set up by the state of California. I believe it's a privately funded shelter that is strictly for people with mental health issues. So it was pretty frightening. I was in with schizophrenics, fetal alcohol syndrome. There were a couple people that were in there like me who had just been mentally very depleted because of our situations. There was a guy in a wheelchair who had lost the use of both his legs in an automobile accident, and he had been left by a roadside and drank antifreeze to keep himself alive. So there was a lot of tragic stuff in this place, and I realized in some levels how lucky I was to just be recovering from a traumatic brain injury and not permanently, well, who knows what's permanent and what's not anymore. So what's happening to these people is, because no one really wants to deal with them, they're like in this revolving door of all these drugs. I was probably the only one taking one medication. To give you an idea, there was probably, oh God, they had pill boxes full of just countless amount of drugs. It was pretty insane. And I'm looking at all this and I'm saying, really? And they have 30 days to stay in the shelter, and then they're out on the streets again. They have nowhere to go. And I was shocked to see what we were really starting back then, and that was in early 2002. I was in that shelter. My head injury was in 2001. And that was when I started this whole deep, dark descent into benzo hell and the mental health system and addiction and trying to get my way out of it. So I stayed for 30 days and I was released. I went to stay with a friend back home in Arizona, and through that experience I realized how fortunate I was, because my counselor there said that you have an opportunity to be a voice for these people. And I didn't really understand that at the time, because I'm thinking, well, you know, I didn't see myself as someone who had a mental illness. I had a head injury and I was very sick from a parasitic infection, supposedly, but turns out it was the benzos. Big surprise. And I think as I look back at it, and I've had time to recover from all of this over the last couple of years, I have really reflected at what mental health means. We've built it up into this whole system, and when I was first put on disability, I had gotten the benzos from another doctor, just a GP or something, after I got out of the, actually I was in Costa Rica, so you can get it anywhere down there. It's just basically you just go into a pharmacy and I think I just filled it. I don't even remember how I got it. It's been such a long time. But the procedure of going through all of this and how it's changed in the last, say, 2 decades has been astonishing to see how huge it's gotten, and the amount of drugs that we're dumping into the system, and the amount of people that we have on all this stuff. And it goes back to this whole thing I talk about the lack of interdependency, the lack of connection, the lack of nurturing that we give each other, the lack of support. I've been fortunate in that I have had a lot of great friends who've seen me through, and I know a lot of people that don't. So I try to stay in a place of gratitude with that for sure. So the next turn of events is that our population is growing. We have this huge mental health system. I'm getting my drugs just from a doctor. I didn't know. And because I was considered traumatic brain injury, I guess that kind of goes into the category of mental health conditions, because you're sort of, I don't know, crazy, I guess, from head trauma. I know I was. So I started this process of being able to see what was happening with people, and it was almost kind of like this funneling system we were going through, being sorted and classified into all these different behavioral health issues, and which drug was going to work best for us and how to treat it. And I'm thinking, this is really like a nightmare, you know. I went from seeing it, just going to a little city counseling center where you go in and fill out the documents right at the center, to you have to spend 3 hours with a government worker filling out paperwork, and then you still have to go into another office to see a doctor after the day you fill out the paperwork. I mean, it's just enormous what it's turned into. And where I'd like to see this change, I guess, is to see centers that are built that support people, support health, support finding what you do best in this world. Because when you have something to get up in the morning that you're blissful about, that you love as much as I love music, that's how I've gotten through my recovery and the insanity of being alone over the last 7 years while I've been coming off all this stuff. And I wanted to mention some of the things that were happening in the news that correlate with all of this, as far as the uranium-1. And they kind of, you know, hit it really hard when, you know, they busted Trump's campaign advisor, and then later they retaliated with Hillary knowing, you know, all the stuff about uranium-1 and the deals in Russia and all of it. But anyway, the bottom line is it's all connected to Russia. And so we have a drug called phenibut that's legal in this country and nowhere else on the planet. Okay, so do the math here. And this is why I emphasize, a lot of people have asked me about the Chill 6 and Cavanase and all these things. Don't take it, because you'll end up like me with I had a triple cross tolerance to Lunesta, benzos, and phenibut. And I'm finally almost off the phenibut, but that got hit. That's what triggered this whole 4-month rave. As I got halfway through that taper, and bam, I was like on my ass with such bad stuff. And then the stress of losing the financial support was just brutal. I mean, I am still rallying to get my life back. We live in a difficult place right now. We're going through this huge planetary transition that is requiring us to all have to find some accountability in where we fit into all this, and it's not an easy thing to do. I know I've certainly gone through many a night of wondering how I'm going to pay my bills and what I'm going to do in my life next. You know, I mean, just getting, you know, when you're in withdrawal, it's just getting through the next day. And I'm finally kind of getting to the point where my life is kind of coming back together in bits and pieces. It's still not there yet, and I'm still not 100% physically back, but that's why I wanted to share some of this stuff with you. We've had an involvement from the government where I've seen, again, back to the mental health system, go from this kind of smaller state-run thing to Obamacare, where now the government is running everything. And to give you a little example of what this has been like, being on disability and trying to work your way out of the system, is that the way it's set up is, I don't know who thought of it, but they certainly were on disability who figured it out. They have 3 legs in state of Arizona that you have to comply with to get off disability when you go back to work. And I've been a little bit in that process myself, so it's been astronomically difficult with my brain in the shape that it's been some days to comprehend what the hell I have to do exactly. First of all, you have to call SSI. which is, you get 10 stories from whoever you happen to talk to there to begin with, okay? Which is why we need to bring it down to another level, I believe, because you just can't. It's like telling that, you know, that story or the game we used to do with the telephone, where you tell a statement to somebody and then they pass it around the circle, and it's way different when you get to the end of the circle. And kind of that's how disability works, is that I think they're all trained by the telephone technique. Is they get their information, and then by the time it gets to you, it's really watered down and it's all wrong. So like, for instance, I'd call one time and I'd hear, well, you can make as much as you want for the first 9 months, and then, you know, they start deducting your disability or what. I mean, it was just everything. And so I'm like, well, what the? So finally I found in Arizona, it used to be called ABLE, the Arizona Bridge for Independent Living. They help you get back to work and find your life again after being on disability. And they've changed the organization here in the state to be called Ability 360. Well, it was a task just getting a hold of a counselor there. It took me almost 2 months, jumping through hoops, phone calls, calling them back. They have like 5 different offices in Phoenix, different areas, and I don't know if any of them communicate with each other. So I finally found a counselor who was able to get a hold of my disability records and know my case so she could advise me. Turns out, okay, they have a 9-month trial work period, which is what you're supposed to be able to do to be able to get back to work. During that 9 months, if you're making more than $850 a month, it's considered a trial work period. That's $850 without your disability check. So that's like $850 plus whatever you get on disability. They don't count that. However, the state insurance, which is Access here, we do not have. I mean, you have the choice to be on Medicare Part A and B here, and it's so confusing. I don't even know if I can explain it accurately, but I'm going to try. You can do A and B, and then, but you have to pay for part of it out of your disability check, and it's supposed to be a little better than the state plan, but I don't see the difference. I mean, there's a few things that are covered that state doesn't cover, but if you don't get very much on disability to begin with, how do you afford to pay more out for insurance? So it's pretty scrambled. So then you're working with this counselor, and she's right, you can make as much as you want for 9 months. If you go over $850, they count it as a trial work month. Well, that was supposed to be $850 for 2018, not 2017. So I finally found out from another worker through the state that that wasn't changing until January, apparently. So the Freedom to Work program, this is another totally different program. They help you with your insurance. Now, they have some warped way to configure. They give you for self-employment, they give you a $65 deduction. Whoopee, that doesn't even cover my internet. And then after that, they divide your total wages, your disability income and your work wages, and they divide it by 365. I wrote all this down because I couldn't follow it. But anyway, if you go over a certain amount, which is not as much as even Social Security gives you, it's like even less than the $850. If you go over that, then you're disqualified from the state health care program, and you have to go into another program, which is called Freedom to Work. And then you have to pay taxes. You got to set up a quarterly thing with the IRS. And I'm just like, what? When I'm calling these people, I mean, my head is like spinning, because I mean, I'm already stressed out going back to work and trying to shuffle like a bazillion things that I haven't had to do in a long time. And then I'm supposed to navigate the system. I think, and this is what I'm proposing, is that I think that every state politician that is involved with writing policy needs to go through the program they're writing and not get their wages. I mean, get what we're getting on disability, and then be impaired on top of it and have to try to navigate this whole thing. And I still don't think I have it all figured out. I don't know that I ever will. I'm just flying by the seat of my pants right now because I'm so frustrated with the whole thing that I want to scream, and I just decided that I have to focus on getting my health back. And if I screw up, then they can throw me in jail because I'm just not that invested in complying at this point with everything that's going on in the world. They don't, so why should we? I mean, look at, for God's sakes, what's going on. They're wanting us to abide by their rules that they can't even do. Okay, so anyway, get off my soapbox here for a moment. And what else did I have? I wanted to make sure I touched on all this. Oh, yeah, the government agencies. So I find out from this one place, because I had to fill out a W-9, which I haven't had to do in like a bazillion years. And lo and behold, I find out that we've gone from the IRS issuing our W-9s to Homeland Security issuing our W-9s and 1099s. I'm like, this is interesting. So for those of you who aren't old enough, let me give you a little lesson about Social Security and Homeland Security, which we did not have until 9/11. And we gave up a lot of our rights at that stage because, which I still believe, if you guys have not seen Loose Change, I'm going to put all these links that I'm talking up tonight about some other things that I'm going to go over to, and they'll be in the boxes below. The Loose Change is all about what we weren't told about 9/11, and it's pretty interesting stuff. I think Americans are so fearful. I mean, everybody, with all the stuff on the news and the media, everybody's so full of fear. And, you know, you guys, we've been through Benzo withdrawal, for God's sake. What are we scared of anymore? Jesus, we've seen all of our demons. You know, it doesn't get any worse than Benzo withdrawal. It doesn't. You know, I'm just like so like not fazed by the stuff I used to be. Okay, so where was I going with this? Oh, Homeland Security. So in walks Homeland Security, taking care of all of a sudden, you know, and I'm sure this has a lot to do with the immigration hassles and stuff we've had with people coming to this country illegally and working. So now we've had to get home. But my point is, too much of the government is running it. We did not have this much government in our personal affairs even 20 years ago. And personally, they can't run the government, let alone our lives too. It's just impossible to do because it's so huge that we are ending up with just this big, excuse my French, but clusterfuck, because that's what it is, of organizations that are being paid to basically put people to work for the government in some job that they really don't give a shit about. So, that's my rant on that subject, the mental health and disability system. I wanted to now shift into some more positive frame of reference, and that is some changes I've made in my life. And over the last, well, I've actually been doing some of this stuff throughout my withdrawal and recovery, which has been helpful. But I had a friend suggest a couple things to me, one of which I found on my own, but there was a couple things that he helped me with. This is a very mild thing for those of you who are still really sensitive, and I find it's really helped me a ton. And this is an herb, comes in a bulk. I got it, and I'll leave this, dropping things all over. I'll leave the link up for this. They're called Smile herbs. You can get like really fresh oat tops from them, and Milky oat is actually, you can give it to babies, it's so benign. I've been drinking this stuff like 2-3 cups a day. You have to boil it, and I know that's a big hassle for those of you who are not physically in very good shape yet, but try, because it virtually has wiped out almost all my electrical shocks. I have a little bit of tingling left, and in a little over a month this stuff rocks. I mean, it's really good, and there's virtually no overstimulation from the herb. It works on calming the central nervous system. So I'm going to be incorporating a lot of this stuff into a program that I want to design to help people who are recovering from these drugs that want to come to our center and work with a bunch of healers that I'm putting together. So really good herb, especially for those of us who are super sensitive. Second thing is the link to Dr. Daniel Amen's site. Dr. Daniel Amen is a two-time board-certified psychologist who has written 10 New York bestsellers. His work is amazing with what he's done with people with traumatic brain injuries, including myself, because no one ever tied all of the head trauma I have had into a lot of my problems. And he treats a lot of NFL players. They have a huge success rate with recovering their function from TBIs. And I believe that we go through sort of a TBI, PTSD sort of thing coming off these drugs, because all of a sudden we have nothing suppressing our central nervous system, so everything goes haywire. And there's a couple of technologies, including his diet, that I want to share with you guys tonight because it's been so amazingly helpful to me. I've had a really good week, first really good week since I went into this wave last summer around August, and it's been a result of the Milky oat tea and his diet, and how it differs from just a straight paleo type diet. It's called the Omni diet, and it is basically a plant-based diet with a moderate amount of protein. I personally believe that those of us recovering from benzos, and I know I'm probably been through this before with the vegans, just don't hate me. You guys do what you can do for yourselves, but for benzo recovery, you need to eat protein. I mean, I was a hardcore vegan, and I understand the spiritual philosophy behind not eating meat, so I'm not uncompassionate about people who want to respect animals' rights. Not at all. However, animals have been eating each other for hundreds of years and will continue to eat each other for survival purposes until we die. I have had to adapt to this whole program that I was really resistant to, and it's helped me a whole lot. It grounds me when I feel all wired out, and I have those days, a lot of them lately. I can eat a piece of protein in it, just a couple eggs, just a little tiny piece of fish, lamb, whatever, turkey, chicken, but lots of vegetables, very low carbohydrate. I need a fair amount because I lose weight too quickly if I go on a total low carb diet, and I don't want to lose any more weight, so I have to eat around 100 carbs a day. But I've eliminated all grains, meaning the rice flour I was using for my crust is now almond meal. The oats I was using in my granola is now all seed-based. It's a very high omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. You need a lot of omega-3. He said for people in recovery, they need about 5,000 milligrams a day. I found a really, you haven't seen my Vanna White routine in so long, so I'm going to do it just for Christmas. This is a really good omega-3 oil. It has about 1,200 grams per capsule, so it's really high, and it's a real clean fish oil, so I've having very good luck with this. There's several products that he recommends with the diet. You have to do the diet. That's the bottom line, because you can't do the supplements without the diet, because it won't work. So, my program consists of about 4 or 5 small meals a day, fair amount of protein, a lot of vegetables, very low fruit intake, at the most maybe a cup of berries in my smoothie, and maybe a half an apple with some almond butter. But you have to get that ratio up because the omega-6s cause inflammation, as do the benzos, and that's part of why we get all of these strange phenomena, the electrical stuff, and I virtually have had almost a solid week with the only symptoms left that I have now are the tight muscles and tingling, but my energy on a couple days has been phenomenal. I've been able to get tons of stuff done, and I'm sticking with this. Needless to say, you guys have a choice. You guys have a choice what you want to do with this, and you can make a lemonade out of lemons, or you can leave it to all the doctors to give you more pills or whatever it is they're going to try to do for us, because unless you can afford to go to an integrative doctor these days, that's all you're going to get in our healthcare system is more drugs. And I think we need to move away from that, which is why I'm putting this program together. It'll consist of the diet, teaching people to use the diet, how to prepare meals, how to plan so you're not stressed. I've had to take days and just do nothing but cook. And I use stevia. I can bake stuff with coconut flour. I've had to completely revamp my whole kitchen to do it, but it's working, and it's miraculous, really. I feel so much better than I did, other than my allergies and my muscles, but that's coming. So a lot of omega-6 or omega-3, low omega-6, so I've cut the ratio of nuts and seeds. I'm doing a lot more chia seed, pumpkin seed, hemp seed, and flax seed in pretty much everything. If I have squash soup, really yummy squash soup that I make with, and I can share recipes. If any of you guys want any recipes, I'll be happy to post them or send them to you, because I have a ton of stuff I've been putting together for all this. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about was Brainstate Technology. This has been a process I've used for on and off since I've been coming off the benzos, and is developed by an engineer by the name of Lee Gertis up in San Francisco. He was attacked by a bunch of thugs, and he was clubbed and had PTSD really bad. He couldn't get out of the house, so he developed this and I'm going to put their website up here too. He developed this technology using computer software and digital frequencies for the brain to be able to heal itself. And the brain sends signals to the software, telling it the frequencies it needs. So basically it's the brain telling the computer how it needs to hear things for healing. And it's really fascinating stuff. I guess I'm drawn to it because I'm a musician, so it really made sense to me that frequencies could heal us. And I have had pretty profound shifts in my EEGs since I've been doing this. Over the course of about 3 years now, I've had the initial 10 sessions done, and then I had, I think, a few more done toward the end of my benzo taper, and then I had several more done a year ago when I came off the Lunesta, and then I went back. I got a grant to cover some medical bills, and I was able to go in and have 3 more sessions last week, and they are extremely relaxing. You just sit with headphones on and you listen to music, and your brain does all the work. It's about 2 hours for each session. You take a break in between. It's best to do them all back to back so that the brain can remember, but she showed me scans, EEGs, of when I first came in last year's EEG to this one, and with doing the TM and meditation, the frequencies, the shift was phenomenal. I mean, I wouldn't have believed it unless I'd actually seen the EEG myself, but my waves were seriously out of whack after coming off the benzos, and they were so balanced. She said there were just a few areas that were still a little overstimulated, and I feel that the diet has been kind of the added piece of the equation that I needed with the brain state stuff. So if you guys can afford it, they also allow you, here in Scottsdale anyway, is where the school is at here in Arizona, and they have students that are learning, and so you can get into the center, and I believe either get them free or at a discounted rate. So you might want to call, you can get their number from the link at the website below and see if you could qualify to get in for a free student treatment. And they have teachers that are facilitating, so they know what they're doing and how to read the EEGs and how the software works. So it's pretty incredible stuff. When I first found it, I actually had seen Winona Judd had gone through doing these frequencies for some medications she had been taking, and she said it had been pretty profound for her too. So I wanted to acknowledge them for helping me with my recovery, and I'm very grateful to Music Cares, who provided the grant for me to be able to go and get my teeth fixed and a few other things that I was in bad need of because my disability doesn't cover any of those services. So the bottom line here is that we need to take care of each other. We're not doing a very good job of taking care of each other, and that's what the Follow Your Bliss Foundation is all about. It's about taking care of each other and helping each other find our uniqueness and our purpose in life, and the reason to get out of bed in the morning, and the reason to keep going when things get tough. Because as we all know, as Benzo warriors, that we have some pretty tough days, tougher than a lot of people going through the world. And I think it goes back to the level of sensitivity, the HSP thing, which I've talked about extensively in my videos too, is that most of us who are impacted by these drugs tend to be more sensitive. This is documented work by a psychologist who studied animal life, crosses over into the bird population, everything, and I have a whole video dedicated to that as well. So I'm probably going to cut it off because I've gone pretty long tonight. It seems like, oh, there was one more product that I am taking as ginkgo. It might be too much for people going through withdrawal still, but at recovery, it also helps with memory, focus, and inflammation, which is a big part of our problem, which is why our muscles are so tight and we have so many other things going on, is because of inflammation. These drugs cause a lot, and so you have to get your sugar level down, your omega-3 up, and slow the inflammation down that's going on in your body. I highly recommend that you listen to Daniel Amen's videos. I'm going to find one to post that I think is kind of more introductory. Him and his wife have both put out a magnificent amount. They're helping in the school systems. They're helping in their churches. They've had a huge population of their church that has lost a ton of weight on this program. And from what I was just talking to a friend of mine, I guess they're declaring this to be like the diet that can heal. And I'm here to tell you that I've had a pretty profound shift, and it's hard. I mean, it's a hard diet to stick to because you got to cook stuff and you got to prepare stuff. It's all fresh food, and I've had to cook up a bunch of stuff and freeze it so that when I'm busy during the week, I can grab something out of the freezer and just thaw it out, and I don't have to cook a whole lot of stuff. But it's a lot of fresh vegetables and protein. And the grains, you got to get rid of that. That was where I was falling short, with the grains, because I don't eat a lot of sugar. I was doing a little bit of raw honey, but had to ditch that. And I had to get rid of the rice flour and the rice pasta. That was what I was going to share, is that probably Whole Foods or Sprouts. I'd recommend Sprouts because Whole Foods is, I don't know if you've heard this, but they're considering putting pharmacies in there now that Amazon has bought them out. Not behind that so much, but I do think that the well, they can do what they want to do, so that's not my opinion, but you just have to educate yourself so you know not to take them. So that's where it starts, is we've got to know what we're putting in our mouths between the food and the drugs, and make informed decisions so that the marketplace will dictate health and not drug addiction, because that's where we need to start. The accountability needs to start with education, which is what this project's all about. And I hope that it helps. If you guys have questions about the diet or anything, you know, you can ask me. Casey, I hope that you are making some progress. I know you've had a really, really rough time and have reached out to me a number of times, and I hope you have a decent holiday. I know you and your son are struggling, and I'm really sorry that you're going through so much hell, like we all have been, but you're all going to come out of it if you invest in yourself. You're all going to come out of it with miraculous returns, because you're going to know so much about yourself after you meditate and you eat healthy and you stop and smell the roses and stop and find out who you are, instead of this robotic society that we're in that has just basically been conditioned to buy stuff. And if you don't get off that rat wheel and reinvent yourself, because that's what it's all about. You just got to reinvent yourself. I've had to do it a zillion times at my age. The whole music industry's changed, and I'm like totally like I'm going through this consulting thing now, you know, with learning social media. You just have to keep learning. You have to, because the technology is changing, and I've gone through a generation of musicians that started out on vinyl recordings, and we've gone through vinyls to 8-tracks to CD or to cassette tapes and ADAT to digital recording, and now the digital recording is so there's just so many platforms that you're going to get left in the dust if you don't learn a lot of it. And I'm actually working with a consultant to pursue investors for my project, and it's been a lot of work. That's where I've been. I'm trying to rebuild my life after, and 2017 for me, and I'm going to share this because it'll probably be the last video that I get to do for 2017, is I'm going to leave you with 2017 for me is an opportunity to leave my whole Benzo excursion behind and begin to share my experience to help other people heal, like I've been healing myself, and help people find their own journey back from this, and to leave all the anger and the fear and the drugs behind and start 2018 with a clean slate. So I want to wish you a happy holiday, red shirt, and just say I'm really grateful to have had the opportunity to share my stories, and please, no more anger comments. This isn't about blaming anybody. We're in this all together, you guys. We're all in this together, and we all have been impacted by these drugs, and all of us have responded differently. So for those of us who are helping, we're doing the best that we can. Just like anybody else, we make mistakes. So have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I know I'm looking forward to feeling better in 2018 than I do now, and I hope you guys do too. Okay? Take care, and we'll see you next year. Bye.